Now, Lodge let's get started. Bojo Kinawea, Migwanabi Quaid de Go, Jessica Shonias de Jaganashi, Noswin Alwan, Nadik Dodem, Majikining Don Jaba, Minwa, Majikining Megwan Dida, Simdina She Niwen Dinsa Bongus, Minwa Eknomage Jik Dao. Nishnaabemying, Nishnaabemying, Duck Kinomage, Georgian College, Donjanaki Tage, Minwa Nabem, Doa, Minwa Nish, Guizensuk, Doak, Bejik, Leojin Kaza, Nijwaswe, Sabongize, Minwa, Bejik, Bidasegejin Kaza, Bejik, Gweta, Sabongize. Now, Gajaganashi. So, hi, I just gave my introduction in the language. My name is Jessica Shonias. I'm, or Miigwech in Nishnaabemying. I'm from Rama First Nation, and I currently live here right now. I'm recording from my home. So my apologies if you hear my 1-year-old running around in the background, but I'm hiding out in one room and hopefully some of the sound will be muffled. I'm 34 years old, and the reason I share that is because I'm a second language learner, and I think sometimes people like to know timelines of things. So that's why I'm sharing that. I also am a teacher. I currently teach at Georgian College right now, and I teach the language. There's the Nishnaabemying program development program where we teach language and also how to implement language programming in people's respective communities. I also have a husband named Bidabin. He is from, well, two communities, Galbay and Wequemcong. And together we have 2 boys. I have my stepson Leo, who's 7 years old. And he lives with his other parents in Manitoulin Island, so a bit of a ways away. And then together, my husband and I have our son, our youngest son, I should say, Bidasige. He just turned 1 at the end of July. And with Bidasige, we've decided to only speak in the language with him so that he gets the language. So we don't speak English. And I think that's the part that piques people's interest and why I was asked to come speak today. So I'm going to speak on the topic, hopefully you see on your screen, which I've decided to call Nishnaabemying, Endaaying, speaking the language at home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk my journey as a learner myself, because I didn't grow up speaking the language. So I had to learn as an adult. And then I'm going to talk about our journey parenting in the language at home, which has its own unique challenges as well as opportunities. So we're going to talk about that, the challenges and opportunities that go along with that. And finally, at the end, I'm going to be able to share some good resources and ideas for other parents. I just want to note that a lot of this talk will be kind of tailored towards my situation, because that's all that I'm not even an expert in that, but that's a little, I wish I was an expert in my situation, but that's, you know, what I know and what I'm comfortable with. And I'm hoping that there will be some takeaways for other parents and caregivers and teachers, or anyone that has little ones in their lives that you want to share the language with. And then finally, I have all of these resources and links and ideas shared in a Google Doc. It's made public, so we will be sharing the link, and I will open it up and show you around so that you have like a virtual resource or takeaway from that. So hopefully the screen that you see, hopefully, let me see, how do I see if you're viewing this correctly? Okay, yeah, this is working. So hopefully the screen that you see, maybe I'll do this, share. There we go. The screen that you see is going to be a little infographic I made on PowerPoint. I wanted to do like an interactive Prezi and technology did not work, so we're just going to work with this little infographic. I tried to choose something that was like a timeline, and you'll notice the graphic, the timeline kind of goes up and down like this, which I feel like really represents my life and my journey as a language learner, I guess you could say. That's really kind of how it goes. So that's why it was important to me that I chose some sort of image that represents that. There's highs and lows and even plateaus with language learning. And on that note, I just wanted to share that with other people that are learning the language, that there are good days and there are bad days, and there are days where you feel like you're not going anywhere, but not to beat yourself up over that, because that's life and that's just part of the process. And so we just accept it. So let me see if this will work. So this first picture that we see, this is my little about me and my background, which I've spoke about. One thing I failed to mention with this picture, in particular, that I chose, you'll see in the picture in the very bottom in the bright pink skirt, that's me. This was taken, I'm going to say, about 2 summers ago, so that would be 2018, at our Immersion Academy held in Sudbury. So this is an Immersion Academy that me and some friends and some fellow learners have founded, called the Nishnaabemying, which means like beginner or new or young speakers of the language, which is a bit of an aspirational name for us. But what we do is we hold 2 weeks of immersion for adults, young adults, to learn the language, and it's strict immersion, no English whatsoever, and that's my big passion, and that's what really pushed me. So I'm going to speak a lot to that kind of topic and the takeaways that I've learned that have helped progress me to be able to use the language at home. So that's the picture that I decided to choose for my about me. So in the picture, it's myself and there's 2 guys to either side of me, and then one tall guy on the far right. Those are my peers who are also second language learners, and together we formed Nishnaabemying. And the other folks in the back row are our fluent speakers and elders, and that's who we work with that teaches our program for us. So let's continue on to the next dot, the green dot. I'm going to enlarge it here. That is our logo for Nishnaabemying. So that's our Immersion Academy. So this next piece that I'm going to talk about is kind of my journey as a learner myself, and what I've learned from those experiences and how that applies to my life, and hopefully it'll be informative for anyone watching as well. So that's the logo I chose. So my learning journey really, well, how do I say this? My whole life, really, I've wanted to be fluent in my language, and never was. I always took language classes. I think I started as early as daycare. We had language classes at daycare. Growing up, going to school, instead of French language, we had Ojibwe language classes. So the interest was always there. There was always some exposure. And I did pick up like a good little vocabulary going in the language. I could say, dog, cat, chair, table, spoon, all those kinds of things, which was good, but I could not speak. I couldn't put together sentences or form my own thoughts or opinions in the language. And that was what was really holding me back. And I know that's what holds back other learners, is that we know all of these words, but we don't know how the language works and how to piece it together. So that was very much my life from, I'm going to say 1986 when I was born up until 2013. I even took language courses in university, which were actually very awesome, but I was just not mature enough to to get a good grade, really. So 2013, I'm going to say, is when my language learning really took off and became serious. And that's when, I think that 2013 was the first summer that I attended OOG. You'll see OOG, which is a short form for Ojibwe Motadada Oma Gidakiminang, which means let's speak Ojibwe to each other here on our land. And this is an immersion academy for adults, which takes place every summer for 2 weeks in Fond du Lac, Minnesota. And that was the very first time that I attended an immersion academy, which was true immersion. At the time that I first went in, I think it must have been 2013 or maybe 2014. At the time that I went, the program was 3 weeks long, and you lived there, you moved in on campus, and you handed away your computer, your phone, your books, your iPod, anything in English was almost, like contraband paraphernalia, you could say. And it was strict immersion. Everything was in the language. We didn't even use, I wasn't even called Jessica there. We didn't use our English names. We went by our Nishnaabemying names, which is Miigweenaabekwe. So that's how I was known for those 3 weeks. And that was the first time that I went somewhere that was advertised as immersion and was immersion in its truest sense. And that's just because it's very hard to do. It's very time consuming, and to do it right, everything has to be meticulously and methodically planned. Every minute of the day is accounted for and is planned in a way that will get maximum output for the learner. So my hat's off to them. And the first time I went, it was very, very hard. But I stuck with it and I stumbled through. And 6 months after my first 3-week program there, things started to piece together and make sense. It was almost like magic. But it wasn't magic because I did struggle for those 3 weeks. But that's when my journey really started to take off, and things were starting to click, and I was on my way. So I went back in 2014, and then even a couple summers ago, I went back in 2018 because I just felt like I needed a refresh. So when I went to OOC, that was the first time that I met speakers. Not speakers. I met other young folks like me and people that were even younger that had become conversationally fluent as learners. And I asked them, how did they do that? And they said, I just came here for a couple summers. So I knew that there was magic in that, in that format, that this was something that the proof was in the pudding, right? So I was like, okay, well, we need to continue on with this. So I must have been 2016 is when myself and my other friends from Ontario who went to that program with me, the guys in the picture that I was referring to earlier, we took the same format as OOG with permission and implemented it here. And that's how Nishnaabemying was formed. And our program runs every summer for 2 weeks. And we've run for about 3 or 4 years now. And it's been great. It's been awesome. So that's how I spend my summers. I'm a facilitator there. We have fluent speakers who do the teaching and speaking, and then we have second language learners like myself that are kind of the in-between the students and the teachers. So I think that's what makes us special, is that we are for learners guided by learners, because we are learners ourselves. So we know we're in the same position, in the same shoes as the learners, so we know what they need. Yeah, so in 2016, I also took on a job in Manitoulin Island as an immersion teacher myself. I taught phys ed to kindergartens and grade 1s. That also really helped me. Suffice to say that I have extensive experience in immersion settings as a teacher, a student, and a facilitator as myself. And that's where the magic happens, and that's where I like to spend my time, and that's what helps me and my family learn. So a lot of it I'm going to be, coming back to immersion and the gifts that are in that. Also, my time in immersion over the years has given me the bonus of creating an extensive network of fellow learners and teachers, and that is what's really helpful too, be it support, help, advice, questions, or just having friends to speak to that have the same goals. That's been really helpful as well. So we're going to move on to my third dot here, this purple one. And we're going to talk about mine and my family's journey of parenting in the language. So the picture I decided to choose, which is expanded here, is from Christmas from my son Bidoske's first Christmas. I'm holding him and his head is turned away, which is fine because for the most part we keep his face off of social media. So it works that he doesn't want to be in pictures. So that's what that is. So that's myself, our 1-year-old Bidoske, my husband Bidavin, and our other boy Leo, who's 7. That was us in Christmas. So a little bit of a background of us. As I said earlier, I didn't really hear the language in my family or in the home growing up. The most extensive exposure that I had to it was in the classroom with Ojibwe language teachers, or hearing it at gatherings like powwows or community events and having elders say the opening prayers. I've always wanted to learn for as long as I could remember, but it just wasn't something that we heard in the home that my parents spoke. Apparently my grandparents did, never heard them speak for various reasons. So that was news to me as an adult, but suffice to say my parents didn't really have the language, so I didn't really hear it in the home. My husband, on the other hand, he had more exposure to the language. His father is fluent in the language. And on his mother's side, who is from Wikwemkong, or some people call Wiki, there is a lot more speakers there. I would argue that that's probably the one place in the world with the highest population density of Nishnaabemying speakers in the world. So you hear it a lot more in the community, and his grandparents were fluent on his mother's side. So he heard the language a lot more growing up than I did. So it is interesting because him and I have different backgrounds, where I studied more grammar in my own self-study and, reading books and working on verbs and conjugations, and that's a little bit more of my exposure and strength, whereas he gets by using what he knows and what he's heard growing up. So we kind of complement each other in that way, which is nice. Or sometimes he tells me like funny things he heard growing up, and I can tell him exactly what that means just from my book learning. So that's kind of how we get by. I think I must salute my husband because he is very comfortable and natural, even though he's not fluent. Because he grew up with that exposure and hearing the language, he does sound very natural, and he gets by on using a lot of what he knows. And I try to kind of teach him along the way about the difference between transitive and intransitive, animacy and inanimacy, and when you should pick one verb over the other, kind of thing. So it's worked for us so far. The other thing, another example of trying to implement language in our family and in our lives was when I was expecting. I had a whole bunch of birthing words for, things you would say or need to say during labor. So I had those all in English, and I got them translated by going around and asking different speakers how to translate those words into the language. And I made a resource, which I will be sharing at the end. I did make a video public for that with the words written in English and Nishnaabemying, and I recorded myself saying them so people could hear them. But that was really, I made that for myself and my husband, and just decided to share it with everyone else because I'm sure there's other people that want those words. But my husband did use those words during labor, which was very pleasantly surprising, and is like one of the nicest things that anyone has ever done for me. It actually, when things got real, it really was very nice and helpful, and he was able to say, different words of encouragement or support in the language, and that meant a lot to me. So I'm going to share those when we're done, but that's just an example of, something that we try to do as a family endeavor to keep the language in our daily lives. The thing about us and our family, though, is that my husband and I, Bidavin, we speak English to each other, but we speak the language to our son. It is what it is. He's going to grow up bilingual regardless. He's going to grow up knowing English anyway. I mean, it's on the TV. He hears, my son hears me speaking English to everyone. When we go out and we go for walks and we see people, there's not really anyone around. Everyone speaks English, right? So he does hear me speak lots of English, and it is something that I wish we could change. But you know, parenting is tough. So we don't want to make it tougher by not understanding each other and struggling to communicate amongst each other. But that is an end goal that we do want to gradually get to. But I will speak about that a little bit further, but a little bit later on. But I just did want to let you know that that when people hear that we speak the language, people tend to romanticize it and think, you know, how hardcore we must be at home and there's no English, and it gets intimidating for other people, but it's actually not. It's not that intimidating or not all that serious, because we do speak English to each other and we speak a language to our son Bidasage. The other thing is our stepson, he lives with his other set of parents in an English setting. So he's learning alongside with us. So the nice thing about that is that he's at such an impressionable age that he is really eager to learn as well. So he's kind of learning along with us, which is nice. And I don't know, it's just awesome to see him picking up learning the importance of the language, and just seeing his parents try and how hard we're trying. And hopefully he's proud of that, and that we do use the language at home and that he is learning along with us, which is nice. Currently we just get by, like I said, with things that we already know or have heard. But when it comes to babies and parenting, there is a lot of specialized vocabulary that we just don't know, or that you don't use often in everyday life. Changing diapers, putting someone to sleep, bathing someone. You know, like I've never found in a dictionary how to say trim his nails. It's just not that common of a thing. Like, when would you ever think as a learner to learn a phrase like that? Or another one that we had not trouble, but it was we had to ask a lot of people how to say rinse his head, or I'm gonna rinse your head when we're bathing. So just words like that. So we do, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. So we do have, I guess you could say, like word lists that are hung up everywhere in English and the language. So like over the diaper change station, we have a bunch of common phrases there, which I will show later on in this presentation. And like I said, we have laminated words hung up in the bathroom for how to say, brush your teeth, let's wash your head, I'm gonna rinse your hair, dry them off, etc., etc. So yeah, so right now, you know, he's 1, so we get by pretty good just using basic commands, which is like very beginner stuff. So anyone can really do that stuff. You use a lot of commands with children, stuff like put that down, give me that, come here, you know, I love you, stuff like that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Okay. Oh yes, the other thing, like I said, these word lists, that what's helped me the most personally is that I have a whiteboard in the kitchen. That's kind of the area that I see the most and I spend the most time in. So I have a whiteboard listed with new vocabulary that I'm learning. So right now, my son Bidasage, he is really loves laundry. He loves the washer and the dryer and loading things in and folding clothes and that kind of thing. So he likes helping me with that. So that is a set of vocabulary that I'm currently working on. Taking out the trash word. So I have a whiteboard hanging in my kitchen, and I have it bilingual stuff like, I'm gonna take out the trash, let's take this out together, let's do laundry, let's fold this, let's put these clothes away, that kind of thing. So that the whiteboard has been like my lifeline as a new parent in the language. So the next part I'm going to move on is the green circle. So I'm just gonna, the picture that I'm enlarging right now is a picture from a couple weeks ago. Here in Rama, we had a ceremony, what's called a walking out ceremony for my son Bidasige. And basically it's where he takes his first steps on Mother Earth in a ceremony where we celebrate that. And he has some sponsors, kind of like godparents, that sponsor him through that. So this was the photo we took of our group after the ceremony. Yeah, so that's just like another example of how much we try to infuse the language and the culture in his life, so he grows up knowing those teachings and, you know, knowing who he is and knowing what are our teachings around, you know, rites of passage and growing up and that kind of thing. So that's why I decided to choose that photo. But I'm going to talk about a little bit about the challenges and the opportunities, because I think if we reframe those challenges can also be seen as opportunities. So the biggest thing right now is a speaker scarcity. Because Nishnaabemying is a endangered language, there's just not very many speakers around, and speakers are our greatest resource for an endangered language. There are dictionaries and that kind of thing, but if you have access to a fluent speaker, that's way better than any dictionary. So always choose a speaker over those written resources while we have them here. So it's been hard because, like I said, we run into situations like not being able to find in dictionaries words like trim his nails. There's just stuff like that that isn't in dictionaries, and especially with you know, the current global health crisis happening right now, that makes our speakers even more scarce because we can't visit them and see them like we want to for their safety and their health. And you know, like the pandemic right now, that's we could have a whole talk just on that, right, on the challenge, but to suffice it to say, it makes the speakers and the visiting even more scarce than they are on a good day, which is like not that great. So what's kind of helped me get around, has kind of come around that, is Facebook. Lots of elders are on Facebook, and just being able to reach out and send private messages here and there and ask them how to say certain things, and just being patient and waiting till it is safe to see them, and and it'll be worth it when it's safe and all is said and done. The other challenge that we currently have right now, which is related to the last, all of the above, is childcare. There's very few options for childcare to keep our son in the language, and that's something that we don't have childcare in the language right now. And I am starting work on teaching online, and we haven't been able to find anyone. So yeah, so he's probably going to have to go to an English daycare or have an English babysitter or something, which isn't the worst thing. Like I said, he's just going to learn how to be bilingual regardless. So it's reframing it, looking at the positives in that sense, that he's going to learn. I think it's called code switching, when you go back and forth between languages and you learn, oh, okay, this person only knows how to speak English, so I have to speak English to them. But mom and dad speak the language, so I speak the language to them, and the gifts that come along with being bilingual. But the only challenging, which is nice, but the thing with, you know, bilingualism, of course he's going to know English, right? Which is great and fine. But the thing with Nishnaabemying, it's not like it's like Spanish or French, where there's speakers and there's a opportunity. There's lots of speakers in that, and he can watch TV and read books and even pursue an education in that language. We don't have the same you know, opportunities in Nishnaabemying. So being a parent and trying to parent in a target language, in an indigenous language like this, it kind of means that you're always in a drought, in that there is never enough Nishnaabemying. So I'm always on the hunt for resources, speakers, different opportunities. Like he'll never get enough Nishnaabemying language. but I never have to worry about his exposure or resources, what have you, in English. So that's kind of like the flip side to that. I personally too, I miss being around speakers because I'm a learner as well. So that's also why I would prefer to have, childcare in the language or visits in the language, because I have lots of questions on how to say certain things that just aren't really in dictionaries or books and are just better being asked in person. And with my experience in immersion, I have learned that your language acquisition and fluency greatly increases when you are speaking one-on-one, face-to-face with a native speaker in the language. So yeah, so that's something that that is just a reality that we are always going to have to focus on, and that I wanted to share with other folks that are keen to learn the language is yeah, always go to places where you think a speaker can be, or build that network and build those friendships to have those speakers in your life, because they are our greatest resource right now. So as well, like I said earlier, the next step for us in our home is to gradually take out English altogether, so that not only are we speaking in the language to our son, but we're also speaking the language to each other, because that's the real end goal here, right? And that's going to be a gradual process for us, and also like a gentle process. Parenting, we always have lots of guilt, and then it's even twofold when you add on the language guilt on top of your regular mom or parenting guilt. So just to be gentle with ourselves and to know that this is a gradual process, but we keep at it, and over time we will get to the end goal. So just keeping our eye out on the prize. So one way that we're thinking of gradually implementing this is having random immersion hours where we just speak in the language just for an hour, maybe once a week, and just find out that way. The other nice thing about doing something like this is, or even half an hour. Half an hour is a long time to not speak English if you are new or learner. And then being able to go back into English immediately after is good, because when you're doing that half an hour or 20 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is that you decide, there's lots of holes. You suddenly realize there's lots of stuff that you want to say, that you're like, oh, I never thought of that. Like, I don't know how to say that, and I never thought of that before. So that is a challenge and opportunity of doing immersion at home, is now you are learning areas that you need to learn. So for myself, I always have my phone with me, and I keep a running note. I have an iPhone with a notes app in there, and I keep a running note going when I run into areas there where I say, like, oh, I don't know how to say I'll be right back, or I'm gonna go get something, I'll be right back. I don't know how to say that, and that would be like an everyday useful thing. I never thought of that. So I write that down in my note, and then when I am around speakers or have time to sit with a dictionary or reach out to another language friend, I can ask them, how do you say that? And then I get the translation, and then it goes on the whiteboard, and then I see it every day. I look at it, I use it until I've used it and memorized it enough that I can erase it and go on to the next thing. So that's a challenge and opportunity of doing immersion, is not to beat yourself up over the things that you don't know, to write them down and plug in those holes and keep going back to immersion and keep getting stuck and running into those dead ends, writing down your to-do list of things you want to translate and say, and getting them translated and going on. That's kind of like the formula that works for me. And it's also the only format that really works for us at home, because parenting is busy, right? And life is hectic. So there's that. Yes, so that's the next process for us, is doing those gradual immersion hours. The other thing that we want to work up to after doing something like that is choosing days or afternoons where we say it in the language to each other, me and my husband, or try to say it in the language and then say it in English. So that way, at least our son is hearing us trying, and we're getting comfortable speaking the language to each other as co-parents, but still understanding each other with the translation after. And again, like I said, there's lots of holes there where we don't know how to say that, and we learn together and we help each other and figure that out. So it's like a lot of times with any language learning, whether it's with children or, you know, as an adult learner yourself, there's always this the biggest hurdle, I would say, is getting past the shyness and getting used to the uncomfortableness of being able to converse with someone when you are still learning. And that's what immersion did for me. Is it was very, very hard, but once I survived those 3 weeks, I was like, you know what, I can do this with anyone. And that's been the greatest takeaway. Because once you get comfortable being uncomfortable as a learner, then you're off to the races and you can start conversing and just getting used to not knowing things. And that's where the real learning happens. Like I said, running into those dead ends is the only way for you to find out the holes or the things that you and your family want to say so that you can get the answers. So there's that. So yeah, so that's our gradual process, is having immersion time where we run into those holes and get those answers figured out, and then trying to say it in the language and then translating into English so that eventually we become comfortable speaking to each other, and then gradually, you know, just speaking the language to each other. And that would be our only language at home. So that's the big end goal for us. So I'm going to move on to this last picture here, the pink one. The picture that I have enlarged is my son is sitting in my lap. So you see his the top of his head and his feet, and he's holding a book to the left called Ode to Da, which means let's go to town. And then those are some of his books. All of these books are in the language, and that's his favorite thing to do is to read books. So we read in the language to each other, which is really awesome. So so the thing with books in the language is that how do I say this? Well, first of all, reading with your kids is great in any language, right? You're spending that close bonding time to each other, but also it is a way for me as a learner, and in the absence of having speakers around, it's a way for my son to hear me speaking in the language correctly. So for the first time all day when I'm reading those books that have been written by a fluent speaker, I know that he's at least hearing me talk properly, right? So there's that. He's also picking up on the sounds himself from hearing that, and we're learning together. And we do have certain books, like there's this one book we have from, which community is it? Chippewas of Nishnaabemying. They have a book called Sophie, which means wake up Sophie. And she doesn't want to wake up, and she says, oh, ka gyabe, what does she say? Oh, ka dequest gyabe ninba. No, I'm tired. I want to still sleep. And she keeps saying that over and over again in the book. And then I hear my husband, you know, when he's tired and my son tries to wake up early, and he says, oh, gyabe ninba. I still want to keep sleeping. So it's teaching us too, as parents and learners, which is nice. There's lots of useful stuff in there. So I have here, everything can be done in the language. When you have a kid, anything that they want to do is a language activity. It's just a matter of finding a couple of, you know, base vocabulary to work with. So whatever your kid is interested in, doing it in the language, using those dictionaries, finding those speakers, and doing the activity in the language. Okay, so I have here 5 minutes per day. So my learning as a parent has plateaued and stopped because I'm just busy. So I asked fellow parents who are only speaking the language to their kids. There's like a small group of us. There's like 5 families where we keep in touch. And one parent said, just commit to 5 minutes a day of studying if that's all you can do. Because a lot of times we feel like, oh, we need this hour-long study session, we need to really hit the books and really get into it. And so sometimes as parents we're able to do something like that, and then we never go back up to it. And then a month or 2 months goes by and then we try to do it again. That is not very helpful because you're not keeping up the habit. Whereas if you can commit to 5 minutes a day, every day, that is much better. So just 5 minutes a day of studying as a parent, whatever that is. If it is something that your child is interested in, like I said, and learning those words beforehand, do that. And then do that with the child in your life, and you're learning together, which is really a beautiful thing. So the other thing I already spoke about: stories, books, dictionaries. There are dictionaries online, which I will show. So there's one in particular that I would recommend, and they're free, and you always have your phone with you, so you always have a dictionary. And we do that all the time. We get stuck on things, and we're right there with our son, and we just look it up really fast. It takes just as long as to look something up online in the dictionary as it does to text someone, and then boom, we found the word. So I'm just going to pull up my Google Doc. Okay. I hope this is working. Okay, hopefully this works. So this is my Google Doc. It's called Nishnaabemying, Endaaying, speaking the language in the home, with October 5th, 2020, which is the day I think this video is going live. So the first document I have is birthing words. This is for anyone that is interested in what I spoke about before. So I have words: she is in labor, breathe slowly, relax or release your jaw, try a different position, the baby is in breach, you're doing a good job, don't touch me, can't do this anymore, how far has someone dilated, etc., etc. So those are written, but then you have the link here to the YouTube video. Hopefully it's going to load. And it's just the same words.
Akze, Nengach, Nesen, Gegwa, Getin, Dekonjigeke.
So that's what that is, to help with pronunciation. And that's me. I just recorded myself on my phone really fast. Okay, so that's birthing words. How many do I have? I have 65 of them. My husband memorized all of them. So next I have labels around the house. So these are pictures that I took to offer some ideas to other caregivers. So this is our change station at home, the change table. And then you'll see I have laminated words hung up that are in both languages, that are diaper changing words that we read and refer to all the time. So this is a close-up of what one of them looks like. So I have anjpish, which means change his or her diaper. Ka'anjpinin, I will change your diaper. Ki anjpinana, did you change his diaper? Gi anjpina, I changed his diaper. Chimagza, he or she smells as stinky. Esna gachimagwa, so are you ever stinky? Winagdane, Dazian, his diaper is dirty, etc., etc. Right? So you get the hint. I also have getting dressed words. Anskonye, change his or her clothes. Gui anskonye in, I'm going to change your clothes. Biskosh, dress him or her. Gui biskonin, I'm going to dress you. What else do we have? Bedtime words. Yekze, he or she is tired. Gede kwesna, are you tired? Nebe, put him to bed. Gi nebe ana, did you put him to bed? mananguaman, sleep well, etc., etc. So what else? Food words, feeding words. These are up in the kitchen. Bakade, he or she is hungry. Gibakade na, are you hungry? Bakade dik, he must be hungry, etc., etc. Wiwisne, he wants to eat. And yeah, breastfeeding words, etc. So next to that, this is my famous whiteboard that I was talking about that was in the kitchen. This is our old place before we moved, but I started this for, it says Kidwinin Wag Kendaming, words that we want to know. So these are just in English that I hung them up, wrote them up on the wall for words where I'm like, I need to say this all the time, but I don't know how. So at the time I was stuck on you will feel better. Do you feel better now? I'm trying to eat. I was trying to eat, but couldn't. Did you eat a good amount? Don't scratch yourself. Soother, pacifier. So I have those words up there. Then I will, crowdsource online or call someone, or if I see someone, I'll ask them. And then once I get the translation, I will write them beside in red and look at them and read them and use them as I see fit until I feel comfortable that I know them. Then I erase them and a new set of words go up. And that's something that's always worked for me over the years, before I became a parent and after. So the next part I have is resources. So these are resources that I would recommend. Most of them are websites. So the first resource I have is called Grassroots Indigenous Multimedia. So this is going to take you to the website, but they have different kinds of books. So I took a screenshot of one of their resources called Taj Naz Kaget. I think Taj Fetches. So it's a little story. My son loves this book. We have this book of a book that you can buy. It's written in Ojibwe, and then there's an English translation at the back. So that's what this is our copy. It's pretty beat up. It's well loved. My son loves this book. So it's written all in the language, but the English translation is written in the back. So something like this is very helpful. What's even more helpful, actually, is this book. Full disclosure, this was written by my Aunt Joanne. So it might be a little biased, but it is an awesome book. This is a bilingual card book. It's called Nabih Awan Bish, which means Nabih is water, and hers is bilingual. So Gamelan, rain, Goan, snow. So I only read the Nishnaabemying, but something like this that also has the translation at the bottom is very helpful, because like you as a parent have no idea what you're reading sometimes, and it's just nice to know what they're reading. And maybe your child has questions, so you can be like, oh yeah, it's talking about snow, etc., etc. So this one is beautiful, and this one can be bought on Amazon. So this is called Nabih is water. It's also written just in English. This is by Joanne Robertson. And the illustrations are beautiful. So anyway, so they must have like 30-ish books, and we own every single one of them. And we read them all the time. The nice thing too, you'll see under here, there's a YouTube link. And this in particular is going to take you to someone reading this particular story.
Taj Nazikagade.
So you can hear how it's... So you can hear how it's pronounced.
Minwendan Najibatwadong Mitigunsung Apagijagardainig.
So maybe a video like this might not be the most captivating for your child, but it would be helpful for you as a parent if you are not familiar with the writing system yet, to watch yourself, to hear how it is supposed to be read and pronounced.
Abeding Ogi Mikan Mitiguns Gainwak Quedining.
One time he found a stick that was very large. That's what that says. So yeah. So there's another example. Okay, hopefully my screen sharing is still working. Now the following on my Google Doc here is a bunch of links and resources online. So the first one I have here is Chiging ARP, which stands for Chiging Nishnaabemying Revival Program. They have a ton of awesome resources. They have interactive online games. They have videos of speakers telling the story in the language. They have, and some of them are transcribed into English and translated. They have, you know, like legends in the language. But this particular website in particular, chiging.ca/classroom.html, is going to take you to their classroom lessons with audio. So there are lesson plans on a variety of different things. So that's nice because it's like ready-made and ready to go for activities that you can use at home. And the audio is so important too, right? So we can hear how things are supposed to be said. So I would highly recommend anything that Chiging puts out is really awesome. The next website I have, Stories and Songs for Kids, that's ojibwe.net/stories/children's. They have all kinds of stuff too, but what is nice here for them is that they have nursery rhymes that are in the language, their own nursery rhymes that are in the language, so you can see they're written in both languages and hear someone singing it. Because kids love songs, and songs are kind of the easiest way to learn together. So I would recommend that one as well. Then we have Nishnaabemying.com. So that has all kinds of printable activities for kids, online games, legend stories, that kind of thing. And then we have next here is a Quizlet set. This is done by Alan Corbier, who these resources, this Quizlet is attached to the Chiging ARP program, but he has all kinds of study sets relating to with their stuff that they do at the ARP with their classroom stuff. But they even have like hockey words, so it's helpful to us because my husband plays hockey and is a huge hockey fan, and we watch hockey all the time. So it's helped us to learn those words so that when we're watching TV, something that's in English with our son, we can make a language lesson out of it and use those words in the language. So my husband, what he learned from the hockey vocabulary when he's watching TV is he'll say, "Oh, gedakwe, bindige." He shoots, he scores, and just using those words over and over again. So there's lots of cool stuff in that Quizlet. And again, the nice thing about that, I think most of these Quizlets come with audio. So you see the flashcard, bilingual, and then you can hear the speaker saying it in the language, so you have that pronunciation. So there's all kinds of cool vocabulary that's in there. Next is I have here a page for families with tons of resources, lesson plans, vocabulary, games, printouts, etc. That is called wakingupojibwe.ca. They are always doing something at this new organization, and they always have stuff that's up there. So just beautiful, beautiful resources. And I think you can follow them on Facebook. I think it's either Waking Up Ojibwe or Nishnaabemying, because they've been doing public Zoom lessons, and they're just always coming out with new resources. They have vocabulary sets for Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, specialized stuff like that. And then finally, this online dictionary, it says dictionary.nishnaabemying.atlas-ling.ca. I'm just going to open this one up because this is the dictionary that I was talking about earlier. It looks like this. It's red. This is in the Odawa and Eastern Ojibwe dialect, so mostly Eastern Ontario, I would say, like east of Sault Ste. Marie-ish area. So you have your English to Nishnaabemying, Nishnaabemying to English, and you have advanced options, which I like because, well, yeah, I don't want to delve too much into it, but basically I have this saved as my homepage on my computer and on my phone. So as soon as I open up my web browser, this pops up. So when I'm playing with my son and I'm stuck on a word, what was the most recent one? We saw a raven, and I couldn't remember how to say it. So I just opened up my web browser, boom, there's a website, I typed it in. Oh, Gogokshi, that's how you would, let me double check, I'll show you right now, Raven. Yeah, Gogokshi. So yeah, so I use that all of the time, and I would highly recommend this dictionary. There are other online dictionaries in Ojibwe or Nishnaabemying as well, and use whatever one works best for you. So, oops, you were screen sharing. Okay, so that is that. So basically, I would say my main takeaways is to be learning together as a family and to embrace the learning, the uncomfortable moments, and the parts that you don't know, because that's just another opportunity. So reframing our challenges into opportunities, and anything can be done in the language. You just need a dictionary or a speaker to help you translate, and learning with your kids. And I think to me, that's the most important part, is that the children in your life, you don't have to be perfectly fluent, and we are by no means ourselves. You don't have to give them perfect language and be fluent and say everything correct. What's most important for your kids is that they see you trying. There's huge life lessons in that we don't give up and that we always try. But also when they see you trying and you putting in the effort, you are role modeling to them the importance of the language and culture. And that's the most important thing, is to give them that awesome attitude and those, the love of the language and the culture and our identity, because the language is what makes us who we are. It's one of the things that makes us distinct, and our worldviews are encapsulated in the language. When we learn the language, we don't have to preach or teach our teachings, because you learn them when you are learning the language, the gifts in the language. The fact that everything in the language comes from the land, and everything is verb based and action based, and we're describing the actions, where it came from, et cetera, et cetera. That's what I'm talking about, is we see that worldview and everything encapsulated. So yeah, don't give up. Change those challenges into opportunities. And I just want to say, miigwech Endaaying, miigwech for listening to me. And I will include that Google link with those resources, and hopefully we can continue on from there. Naha, Bamampi.